In a stunning turn of events, King Charles has personally intervened to expose shocking claims that Labour's recent election victory in Scotland was anything but fair. Allegations of voter fraud have rocked the political landscape, and the King's statement has sent shockwaves across the nation. The question now haunting every voter: was the will of the people truly respected, or was the election rigged from the start? The political calm in Scotland has been shattered by a bombshell that no one saw coming. Just moments ago, King Charles publicly challenged the legitimacy of Labour's supposed triumph in the recent Scottish elections, calling into question the integrity of the entire voting process. This unprecedented move from the monarchy has ignited a firestorm of controversy and disbelief throughout the United Kingdom, raising urgent questions about democracy, transparency, and justice. Sources close to the palace reveal that the King's intervention was not made lightly. After careful review of evidence presented by whistleblowers and independent watchdogs, the King felt compelled to speak out. The evidence reportedly points to widespread irregularities, including manipulated voter rolls, unexplained surges in turnout in key constituencies, and suspicious ballot counting procedures. These findings have left many in shock and disbelief, especially since Labour's campaign had boasted of a clean and decisive victory. The immediate aftermath saw Labour scrambling to defend their win. Party spokespeople dismissed the allegations as baseless and politically motivated attacks aimed at undermining their success. Yet the King's direct involvement has lent gravity to the claims, turning what might have been dismissed as partisan disputes into a matter of national urgency. The political atmosphere now bristles with tension as opposing parties demand thorough investigations and full transparency. Political analysts emphasise that the King's statement marks a rare and extraordinary moment in modern British history. The monarchy traditionally remains neutral, refraining from public commentary on political matters. For King Charles to openly question election results signals an extraordinary breach of protocol, underscoring the seriousness of the allegations. This development has left the entire political establishment scrambling to respond, caught between respecting the monarchy and defending democratic processes. Opposition parties have seized the opportunity to call for an independent inquiry into the election results. The Scottish National Party, the Conservatives, and even smaller parties have united in demanding a transparent investigation to restore faith in the electoral system. The calls for action are loud and clear. If voter fraud has indeed occurred, those responsible must be held accountable and reforms must be put in place to prevent future abuses. On the ground, public reaction is a mix of anger, confusion and fear. Many voters feel betrayed, questioning whether their votes truly mattered. Others express frustration at what they see as a political circus, undermining trust in institutions already strained by years of turmoil. The sense of uncertainty permeates everyday conversations, with the nation left grappling over the validity of democratic outcomes. Behind the scenes, government officials are racing to manage the crisis. Emergency meetings have been convened and promises of swift investigations announced. However, scepticism remains high as many worry that political interests may interfere with the pursuit of truth. The shadow of doubt cast by the King's statement threatens to erode confidence not just in Labour but in the entire political framework. The media frenzy is relentless. News outlets across the UK and internationally are covering the story around the clock. Social media platforms explode with debates, conspiracy theories and demands for accountability. The hashtag Scottish fraud has trended worldwide, reflecting the global attention the scandal has drawn. For many, the situation represents a dramatic test of British democracy at a time when public trust is fragile. Political commentators warn that the fallout from this scandal could have long-lasting effects. Beyond the immediate electoral consequences, the integrity of future elections hangs in the balance. If voter fraud is proven, it could necessitate sweeping reforms in electoral oversight, voter registration, and ballot handling. The implications for Scotland's political stability and the broader UK are profound. King Charles's bold intervention also raises questions about the future role of the monarchy. in political matters. Some view it as a necessary step to protect democracy, while others fear it could set a precedent for increased royal involvement in partisan disputes. The delicate balance between ceremonial duties and political neutrality now faces unprecedented scrutiny. For Labour, the road ahead is fraught with peril. The party's leadership faces intense pressure to cooperate fully with investigations and demonstrate a commitment to restoring public trust. Failure to do so could result in severe electoral backlash and lasting damage to their reputation. Internal divisions within Labour are reportedly widening as members debate how best to respond to the crisis. As the nation awaits the outcome of official inquiries, one thing is clear. The political landscape in Scotland and the UK has been fundamentally altered. The revelations have exposed vulnerabilities in the electoral system and shaken confidence in the democratic process. How the government and political parties respond will determine whether trust can be rebuilt or if cynicism will continue to deepen. This moment serves as a stark reminder that democracy requires constant vigilance and accountability. When allegations of fraud arise, they must be addressed transparently and decisively to preserve the legitimacy of elected institutions. The King's intervention, though controversial, has thrust these issues into the spotlight, demanding action and honesty. The coming weeks will be critical. Investigations must proceed with impartiality and thoroughness. Political leaders must put aside differences to protect the integrity of the system. And voters, weary but engaged, will watch closely to see whether justice is served. In this unfolding drama, one truth remains undeniable. The foundation of democracy rests on the trust of its people. Without that trust, even the most celebrated victories risk being overshadowed by doubt and discord. King Charles's unprecedented statement has ignited a battle for that trust, and the outcome will shape the future of Scottish and British politics for years to come. The ripple effects of King Charles's unprecedented statement continue to grow, plunging Scottish politics into a state of turmoil. The allegations of voter fraud, old and rigged election results that had once been whispered in the shadows were now thrust into the glaring light of public scrutiny. This sudden eruption of controversy left politicians scrambling for answers as the foundations of trust in the electoral process began to crack. Inside the Labour Party, the atmosphere was tense and uncertain. Leaders convened emergency meetings behind closed doors, trying to formulate a response that could contain the rapidly spreading crisis. The party insisted the allegations were unfounded, branding them as politically motivated attacks designed to destabilise their hard-won victory. Yet, despite these denials, there was an unmistakable sense of unease within Labour's ranks, as members feared the scandal could irreparably damage their credibility. Whistleblowers had come forward with startling claims, pointing to specific examples of irregularities across several key Scottish constituencies. These included unexplained spikes in voter turnout, ballots recorded for deceased individuals, and discrepancies in postal vote counts that defied logical explanation. Independent watchdog groups began demanding immediate access to election data and transparency in the ongoing investigations. The political opposition seized the moment to amplify their criticism. The Scottish National Party, traditionally Labour's fiercest rival, framed the scandal as a betrayal of Scottish democracy itself. They accused Labour of using underhanded tactics to suppress genuine political competition and called for an independent commission to oversee a full audit of the election. The Conservatives echoed these calls, stressing the need for accountability and swift justice. Public opinion was sharply divided. Many Scots expressed outrage, feeling their votes had been rendered meaningless by a corrupt system. Protests erupted in several cities, with citizens demanding clarity and action. Others, however, were cautious, wary of jumping to conclusions before the facts were fully examined. The country found itself deeply polarised, with trust in the democratic process hanging by a thread. The role of social media in escalating the crisis could not be overstated. Platforms like Twitter and Facebook were flooded with discussions, some based on verified information and many fueled by speculation and misinformation. The viral spread of the hashtag rigged in Scotland captured the frustration of thousands, while conspiracy theories about shadowy political machinations gained alarming traction among certain groups. King Charles's intervention was a double-edged sword. While it drew urgent attention to the alleged irregularities, it also raised profound questions about the monarchy's role in modern politics. Critics argued that the King's statement blurred the lines between constitutional impartiality and political involvement. Supporters, on the other hand, saw it as a courageous act to defend democracy at a critical moment. The government, caught in the crossfire, was under intense pressure to act decisively. The Prime Minister pledged full cooperation with independent investigations and assured the public that no stone would be left unturned. However, opposition parties remained sceptical, warning that political interests might hinder a thorough and impartial inquiry. Election officials defended the integrity of the process, emphasising the numerous safeguards in place to prevent fraud. They highlighted the rigorous verification procedures and audits conducted both before and after the election. Yet these reassurances struggled to quell the growing storm of suspicion among voters and political figures alike. International observers also weighed in, expressing concern over the allegations and urging transparency. The integrity of democratic elections is a cornerstone of Britain's reputation on the world stage. Any erosion of that integrity could have far-reaching diplomatic and economic consequences, further raising the stakes of the ongoing crisis. The Labour Party faced a crossroads. Some members advocated for a full public reckoning, arguing that transparency was the only way to regain lost trust. Others feared that admitting to any fault would spell disaster in future elections. This internal struggle reflected the broader dilemma facing the party, balancing damage control with genuine reform. Amid the chaos, grassroots activists called for electoral reform to prevent similar controversies from recurring. Suggestions included updating voter registration systems, increasing oversight of postal ballots, and implementing more robust auditing mechanisms. The scandal had exposed systemic vulnerabilities, sparking urgent conversations about how to safeguard democracy in the digital age. For ordinary citizens, the scandal was deeply unsettling. Many who had faithfully cast their votes felt disillusioned and betrayed. The sense of participation in a fair political process, the very essence of democracy, was under threat. This erosion of trust risked long-term disengagement from political life, weakening the democratic fabric of the nation. The media continued to play a pivotal role in shaping public discourse. Investigative journalists delved into the details of the allegations, uncovering inconsistencies and raising uncomfortable questions. Yet sensational headlines and partisan reporting often fueled division rather than consensus, making it difficult for the public to discern fact from fiction. King Charles's involvement had opened a new chapter in the saga, but it also underscored the limits of any single institution's power to resolve such a complex crisis. Political leaders, election officials, the judiciary and the public all had roles to play in restoring confidence and ensuring justice. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with legal battles, political infighting and social unrest. Despite the daunting challenges, some remained hopeful. They believed that this crisis, as painful as it was, could serve as a catalyst for positive change. By confronting uncomfortable truths and embracing reform, Scotland and the UK as a whole might emerge stronger, with a more resilient and transparent democratic system. Yet time was running out. With the next elections looming and political tensions high, swift and decisive action was essential. How the government and political parties managed this crisis would not only determine the future of Scottish politics, but also influence the broader trust in democratic institutions across the United Kingdom. The bombshell revelation by King Charles had set off a chain reaction, one that exposed vulnerabilities and challenged assumptions. The fight for truth, justice and democratic integrity was underway, and the eyes of a nation were watching closely to see who would emerge victorious. As the investigation into Scotland's election controversy intensified, the political climate grew increasingly volatile. King Charles's bold denunciation of Labour's rigged victory had unleashed a torrent of accusations, denials and counter-attacks that engulfed the entire political system. What began as a shocking claim quickly evolved into a national crisis, forcing leaders, institutions and citizens to confront uncomfortable truths about the state of democracy. In Parliament, heated debates consumed lawmakers as they grappled with the implications of the voter fraud allegations. Labour representatives vehemently defended their win, arguing that the claims were baseless attempts to undermine democratic outcomes. However, mounting evidence presented by whistleblowers and watchdog groups made it increasingly difficult for the party to dismiss the charges outright. Tensions flared, with some MPs openly calling for Labour's leadership to be held accountable for any wrongdoing. The Scottish National Party, SNP, sensing a political opening, amplified calls for transparency and reform. They accused Labour of betraying the Scottish people and undermining the electoral process. The SNP's rhetoric struck a chord with many voters frustrated by years of political turmoil and perceived manipulation. Meanwhile, the Conservatives took a cautious but firm stance, emphasising the need for impartial investigations to restore public trust. Public protests erupted across Scottish cities, drawing thousands of citizens demanding answers. Banners reading "Fair Votes Now" and "End Electoral Corruption" appeared in streets, parks and outside government buildings. These demonstrations reflected a deep well of frustration and disillusionment, especially among younger voters who felt their political voices had been suppressed. The social fabric seemed strained as communities debated fiercely about the legitimacy of their democracy. King Charles's involvement remained a focal point of discussion. While many praised the monarchy's intervention as a courageous defence of democratic principles, others warned it risked politicising an institution meant to remain neutral. Constitutional experts debated the long-term implications of the King's actions, questioning whether such unprecedented involvement would redefine the monarchy's role in British politics. As investigations proceeded, electoral officials faced intense scrutiny. Independent commissions were established to audit voter rolls, analyse ballot counts, and examine the handling of postal and proxy votes. Preliminary findings uncovered troubling irregularities, voter registrations with incomplete or false information, discrepancies between polling station reports and official results, and suspicious patterns in late arriving ballots. These discoveries lent credence to the fraud allegations and intensified calls for accountability. Labour's leadership attempted damage control, promising full cooperation with investigations and pledging reforms to enhance electoral transparency. However, internal divisions became apparent as some members pushed for swift acknowledgement of mistakes, while others resisted conceding any faults that could damage the party's reputation. This internal strife weakened Labour's public messaging and fuelled speculation about leadership challenges. Meanwhile, social media became a battleground of narratives. Supporters of Labour sought to dismiss allegations as conspiracies, while critics amplified every new piece of evidence suggesting misconduct. Viral posts and videos spread rapidly, some factual, others misleading or false, complicating efforts to maintain an informed public discourse. The digital landscape magnified polarisation, with echo chambers reinforcing entrenched views. Internationally, observers monitored the situation closely. Britain's democratic institutions are often held as models for the world, and any erosion of electoral integrity raised alarms abroad. Diplomats and foreign governments expressed concern about the potential impact on Britain's reputation and its ability to uphold democratic norms. Economic analysts warned that prolonged political instability could deter investment and harm markets. Within Scottish society, the scandal deepened existing divisions. Supporters of different parties viewed the controversy through partisan lenses, with trust in institutions fractured along political lines. Calls for electoral reform took on urgency, with proposals ranging from mandatory voter ID laws to independent oversight bodies. Yet these reforms sparked debates over civil liberties, access to voting, and the balance between security and inclusivity. Amid the turmoil, grassroots organisations emerged to advocate for democratic renewal. Civic groups organised voter education campaigns, town hall meetings and forums to encourage dialogue and participation. They emphasised the importance of transparency and accountability as pillars of a healthy democracy. These efforts aim to heal divisions and restore faith in the political process from the bottom up. The media's role remained critical yet contentious. Investigative journalists uncovered layers of complexity, revealing systemic issues beyond isolated incidents of fraud. Reports highlighted challenges such as outdated voter registration systems, inconsistent training of polling staff, and vulnerabilities in postal voting procedures. These insights painted a picture of an electoral system in need of modernisation and reform. King Charles's statement had transformed the election scandal from a partisan dispute into a national crisis demanding urgent action. The political establishment was forced to reckon with the fragility of democratic institutions and the imperative to safeguard electoral integrity. The public's demand for transparency was clear, and failure to deliver risked further erosion of trust. For Labour, the scandal represented a crossroads. The party's future hinged on its response, whether to embrace reform and accountability or risk alienating voters and fueling opposition attacks. Starmer's leadership faced its most serious challenge yet, balancing the need for damage control with efforts to unify a fractured party. As investigations continued, the eyes of Scotland, the UK and the world remained fixed on the unfolding drama. The resolution of this crisis would not only determine the fate of a single election, but also influence the broader trajectory of British democracy. In a time of global political uncertainty, the stakes could not be higher.